Well, good afternoon. My name is Isabel Malo. I have just ended my mandate as public officer, July 1st, for the past 5 years, from 2014 to 2019. I was Vice President of the Republic of Panama, also appointed by the President of the Republic as Foreign Minister. So for those 5 years, I had those two responsibilities, and this is a perfect opportunity after leaving office to be here.
So yeah, most of your career did focus on foreign affairs and foreign policy, so I wanted to focus the interview on that. What do you consider your administration's main successes in terms of foreign policy, also your administration's main challenges in terms of foreign policy?
I would mention in terms of successes, we entered office 2014. In 2015, we had the responsibility of hosting the Summit of the Americas. And as you may recall, ever since the Summit of the Americas was initiated in the United States many years ago, the one country from the region that had not participated was Cuba. And the summit before Panama, which was in Colombia, there were major confrontations because many countries stated very clearly that they would not participate on another Summit of the Americas unless Cuba was present. So we took the decision as we came into office that we would invite Cuba. We thought that it was time for all of the countries of the Americas to be present and sitting around at one table. Panama has had a history of being a country that brings together, that promotes dialogue, that promotes understanding. Actually, the first ever summit of all of the Latin American countries in the time of Bolivar in the 1800s took place in Panama. And actually, the last Latin American meeting where the president of, not Latin American, American meeting where the president of the United States and the president of Cuba had been together before the revolution in Cuba was in Panama in 1953. So I was very aligned with our mission, and I think that was very important for the region. And President Obama participated, and President Raul Castro participated, and they held the first meeting between Cuba and the United States. That was, of course, not the result of Panama's effort. That was their bilateral understanding. But I think Panama played a part in hosting the summit and extending the invitation. And I would also mention that under our administration, Panama established diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China. Before that, we had diplomatic relations with Taiwan. And China is an important country, a very large economy. Panama is a country connected to the world. We have the Panama Canal. Our economy just interacts with the world constantly. It was a step that needed to be taken, and that we took. And I would say that is very important. One of the biggest challenges, my study group next Tuesday, it's going to be about that. It's not necessarily a foreign policy challenge, but it is because it affected the image of the country very heavily, and the scenario where that is fought or played is the international scenario, and is the Panama Papers crisis. A situation that exposed countries around the world, but that had Panama's name on it. So even though the Panama Papers was not about Panama, it was linked to Panama as well as many other countries. But because it had our name in it, it was a major diplomatic challenge that made us activate our diplomacy in defense of the country.
So yeah, in your last answer you mentioned several of the main things that I wanted to cover, including your relationship with China. So how has Panama's relationship with China developed over your administration, and how is it balancing that relationship with its relationship with the US?
Panama has been a historic ally of the United States, and we will continue to be always. The United States is our main partner in terms of commerce. I am pretty sure it will continue to be. The United States is the main user of the Panama Canal. Our economy is just very linked to the United States in many, many ways. And Panamanian people have, since the beginning of Panama as a republic, um, been had many ties with the United States. So I would say that that relationship remains strong, and the establishment of relations with China should and has not in any way affected that. Our agenda with China for 2 years, ever since establishing relations, has been very active. We tried under our administration to sort of overcome the many years that had gone by without this relationship. So we established a 12-point agenda that included different things, tourism, for example, and we were able to get the recognition from China as what they call sort of a destination country. So that permits the government of Panama to work with the government of China to bring Chinese tourists to Panama. Amongst those points, you had commerce. We are now exporting meat to China. You have cooperation, people-to-people cooperation, and many other areas. So I would say that the agenda is growing, but it's still a young bilateral relationship.
Yeah, you also mentioned Cuba in your previous answer. What do you think of the current Cuban-American relationship that's happening under President Trump, and what do you think that the region and Panama more specifically can do to sort of repair that relationship, given what it is today?
I think that for Latin America, Cuba is important. Cuba is, in the case of Panama, we have a different system. We are a democracy. We value our democracy. We appreciate our democracy. But we respect Cuba's system. We do not support it, but we respect it. And we really believe, as I mentioned to you earlier, that for Panama, cooperation, dialogue, and understanding is very important. We really believe that the way that countries, same as people, handle their differences is not by pushing them away, is by constructive dialogue. And I think that there could be many advantages to a working dialogue relationship between the United States and Cuba, and it could even continue to support the very initial steps that Cuba has been taking in the past years in terms of opening up their economy.
All right, I'd like to change gears a little bit now to the subject of international development. You worked at the United Nations Development Program for many years. How did you incorporate that into your administration? What progress has Panama made in pursuing sustainable development, and what progress still needs to be made in that arena?
Panama is a country signatory of the Sustainable Development Goals. We are a country that's growing. The fastest growing economy in the Americas is Panama, but we are a country still with development challenges. Amongst those challenges, we are a country with poverty indicators. There is inequality in Panama. Along with that, we have challenges in terms of health, education. Our agenda as a government was a agenda really revolving around social issues. We invested heavily on the social infrastructure of the country. We aligned our government plan to the Sustainable Development Goals. My previous experience and understanding of the development agenda definitely played a role in that. And we were even able to take the Sustainable Development Goals to civil society, the private sector, so that there is an agreement much more than the government. There's an agreement from the country that it is important for our country to advance in terms of development. And as Panama continues to grow, and we have the resources of now an expanded canal, which provide the Panamanian budget $1,500 million per year just out of revenues of the canal, I think that is really important.
As zooming it out a little bit, I just want to ask you what you consider to be the most pivotal moment of your career.
While working at UNDP, I had the opportunity of working extensively on dialogue and consensus building. I had a role on many efforts within Panama to bring together political parties, private sector, labor sector, civil society to agree upon long-term development plans, to agree on should we expand the canal or not, um, to reach political agreements as well. And I think that experience really framed uh, my way of thinking and of analyzing and of approaching situations, which is why I'm such a strong believer of the importance of agreeing to disagree. We don't need to be on the same page for everything. We can agree to disagree, but we need to be respectful about other people's opinions. And I think that was important because it just has shaped my approach to everything.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you, guys.